Christian Dior's life was marked by unexpected changes, from extreme wealth and abundance to dire poverty and homelessness, and back again. However, despite these challenges, Dior went on to establish one of the most powerful brands on the planet. Dior was born in Granville, a seaside town in the north of France, on January 21, 1905. His family later moved to Paris, where he spent his youth. Dior was the second of 5 children born to Madeleine and Alexandre Dior, and his father was the owner of a highly successful fertilizer manufacturer. Thanks to this, the Dior family lived a comfortable bourgeois life, at least for some time. As a boy, Dior was amused by anything that was sparkling or frivolous, but his greatest love was for flowers and plants. He was also passionate about art and hoped to someday become an architect. However, his father had other plans for him. Alexandra didn't think his son would be able to make a living for himself as an artist and instead wanted him to become a diplomat. Although it didn't interest young Dior at all, he eventually caved to his father's wishes and enrolled at the prestigious École des Sciences Politiques in 1925, majoring in political science. This way, he would surely find work as a diplomat after his graduation in 1928. However, 23-year-old Dior found his way back to the creative world. He opened a small art gallery with his father's money and sold art by the likes of Pablo Picasso, Georges Braque, Jean Cocteau, and Max Jacob. But in 1931, both his mother and older brother passed away, and due to the Great Depression, his father lost control of the family business. Just 3 years after setting up the gallery, Dior was forced to close it, and financial troubles were looming. Losing his mother and brother deeply affected the young Dior, and without financial help from his father, he was forced to find creative ways to earn a living. To make ends meet, he sold all the stocks of the gallery, but this wasn't enough. He lost his apartment and had to sleep on a friend's floor, but his darkest days were yet to come. Due to his poor diet and subpar living conditions, Dior contracted tuberculosis, and he spent a year in recovery. Despite these setbacks, Dior was a survivor. Once healed, he found new ways to make money. He started out by selling his fashion sketches for about 10 cents each, and not much later, he also began selling sketches of hat designs to newspapers. Dior clearly had a talent, and he was offered a job as a design assistant with Swiss-born but Paris-based couturier Robert Piguet. Dior later said that Robert Piguet taught him the virtues of simplicity, through which true elegance must come. Working with Robert was Dior's first step towards a serious involvement in fashion, and it opened many doors for him. Christian Dior, the iconic fashion designer, was unable to explore his passion for fashion during the early years of his life due to the onset of World War II. Dior was called up for military service by the French army, and it was unclear what role he played during the war. However, Dior did not stay until the end of the war and instead returned to Paris to work in haute couture for Lucien Lelong, who was a businessman that employed young talents to produce ideas. Throughout the remaining years of the war, Lelong's design house dressed the women of both Nazis and French collaborators. At the end of the war, millionaire Marcel Boussac noticed that he had factories standing idle and wanted to buy a new fashion house. Recognizing Dior's potential, Boussac offered him the opportunity to receive a defunct fashion house called Philippe Egestin. However, Dior refused as he was no longer interested in simply working for others and wanted to create his own fresh start under his own name. Boussac agreed to fund Dior's brand, and he opened up his very own boutique at 30th Avenue Montaigne. Dior's true education came from associating with the world's greatest artists, which instilled a unique eye for fashion in him. Dior was not interested in pragmatism, but instead wanted to reintroduce femininity and luxury. He launched his first couture collection, named Corolla, which was unashamedly decadent and groundbreaking at the time. The pieces harked back to an earlier Belle Époque silhouette and were romantic, lavish, and feminine. The garments were opulent, and each dress had an average of 20 yards of fabric. Despite his father's death in December of that year, Dior continued working harder than ever before. He created a new era of fashion that focused on dreams and glamour, introducing the iconic new look that became synonymous with his brand. Today, the Christian Dior brand remains one of the most prestigious fashion houses in the world, continuing to push the boundaries of style and elegance. In the fashion industry, sometimes the most successful designs are met with criticism from those who are set in their ways. Such was the case with Christian Dior's debut collection in 1947. His designs were revolutionary, but not everyone was pleased. Coco Chanel, a pioneer in androgynous fashion, was particularly critical of Dior's feminine designs. Despite the backlash, Dior's collection was a huge success. Dior saw his work differently, viewing it as ephemeral architecture dedicated to the beauty of the female body. Despite the criticism, Dior persevered and became a major player in the revival of couture in France. He wanted to expand his brand even further, and his globalization went quickly. 1 year after launching his collection, he opened a store in New York City, and with the global launch came an expanded collection as well. To continue his legacy, Dior knew he needed to provide the entire fashion experience. Like many other fashion houses, he began with creating a fragrance, calling it Miss Dior. Later, he also licensed the Dior name for accessories. With the entire Dior look available from head to toe, fans could fully capture the New York look. In the following years, the brand continued to flourish, with Dior dressing the biggest stars of the time. By the mid-1950s, the House of Dior was a highly respected fashion empire. It was also around this time that Yves Saint Laurent entered the picture. The fresh-faced 19-year-old initially began working as Dior's assistant, but it didn't take long for Dior to notice his potential. In fact, he admired the young boy's eye for fashion so much that he wanted him to be his successor when the time would come. Little did anyone know that time would come sooner than expected, as Dior passed away suddenly in 1957. Saint Laurent would go on to succeed Dior and become one of the most influential designers of the 20th century. In 1957, fashion designer Christian Dior traveled to Italy for a vacation in the town of Montecatini. Unfortunately, he suffered his third heart attack while there and passed away at the age of 52. The loss was deeply felt in the fashion world, but to keep the brand from veering off course, Yves was given the role of artistic director. She kept Christian's legacy and vision alive by using the same fabrics and proportions, but also introduced a softer silhouette and pieces that were lighter and easier to wear. Although many of her collections were a hit, the industry struggled to accept someone else leading the brand. When Yves was drafted into the French army in 1960, Dior's management didn't object to him leaving. Following Yves' departure, Marc Bohin was appointed creative head in the late 1960s. He instilled a more conservative style and brought the label's designs back to follow more closely what Christian Dior himself had done. He took the classic concept and brought it into the 1960s by streamlining it slightly, giving it a more modern twist while still sticking to the Christian Dior look. With Marc at the helm, Dior once again became the feminine brand beloved by so many, and the subsequent collections were a hit. Marc was quickly credited as the man who kept the Dior label at the forefront of fashion, and Women's Wear Daily even went as far as to claim that he rescued the firm. For over a decade, Marc continued to build the brand, making it even more internationally successful than ever before. Stores started popping up in more cities like London and Hong Kong, and the Dior fashion house was catapulted to the top of the industry. By the late 1970s, Dior had created worldwide brand recognition, but it had unfortunately also become a hidden asset inside a failing conglomerate called Boussac-Samfrère. In 1978, the Boussac Group filed for bankruptcy, including its assets. However, someone was very happy with this news: Bernard Arnault, the billionaire who is currently running the LVMH empire. Ever since he was a young boy, Bernard had been obsessed with Dior, and the idea of buying up its parent company was music to his ears. When Arnault took charge of Dior, he assumed the roles of chairman, CEO, and managing director. Over the years, a slew of impressive creative directors also added their own little twists to the brand's looks, and despite later being folded into LVMH, Dior continued to be its own impressive standalone brand. Today, Dior is doing well. It recorded a revenue of €28.7 billion in the first half of 2021, and the brand can rightly be titled as the epitome of the fashion industry. The luxurious fashion house has always strived to create an enduring image of itself and has become known for its meticulous attention to detail. It imbues its wearers with an innate sense of style, no matter the season or the time of day, and it doesn't seem like that will change anytime soon. Christian Dior was a revolutionary visionary who almost ended up as a diplomat just to please his father. It took him 4 decades to put on a show, but when his first collection finally launched, the whole world took note. Although he passed away over half a century ago, his Dior legacy has continued to rule the high seas of fashion ever since. Thank you for watching.